Welcome to the Rural Way Podcast, practical business and leadership conversations for small town living. I'm your host, Tracy Schira-Parker, and this is where we get to dig into working hard, showing up, and chasing big dreams from farmyards and small towns. So if you're building a business and a life where the pace is slower, you already know things are different. We don't have the same resources, margins, or risks, and this podcast is where we close that gap. We talk strategy that works, living a lifestyle we love, and staying true to our roots. So if you're ready, let's get at it. Welcome to another episode of The Rural Way. I'm your host, Tracy Schira-Parker. And in this episode, we're going to have a conversation around collaborating, partnerships, relationships, and what that looks like in small town. Because having your competition and doing work, especially in the service area, the trades area, when you have your competition just down the road, the dynamics and the relationships are a little bit different than in the urban settings. So I wanted to have a quick conversation about that. Now, the last two episodes, we talked about marketing. In the episode just before this one, we talked about signage, how do people find you, or the two before this was how do people find you, and talking about how we miss the yellow pages. And then the last one was in regards to signage and getting people to still come into your store, not making assumptions that people know what you sell, and how to modify your marketing based on people's new sense of urgency and convenience and how people's purchasing has changed over the years. So the last two is in regards to marketing with that. This episode, I wanted to explore a little bit about what does collaboration look like in small town business? And when I was driving to town today, actually, I was listening to Dan Kennedy, and he was talking about how all small business they were talking about location dependent business and how you can become a global business even if you are location dependent. And I was like, and he gave an example of a lawyer. And I was like, I don't know if I agree with that, or I don't understand what you're talking about. And he talked about how people can take contracts or take jobs that are out of their service area and make partnerships and source contractors to fulfill those jobs. And so I was like, okay, I get it. I buy what he's selling there. But for most people, I just don't think that's practical, especially if you're in small town. You aren't interested in that type of a headache. But there are opportunities and there is money being left on the table, in my opinion, for a lot of small town business owners, especially if you're in the trades, construction, and other service providers based on size and capacity. And so if you are a one-man show and you have the capacity of you and maybe a helper or two, and a job comes up, who could you partner with? Who could you call in the area and say, hey, let's collaborate on this bid? How can your procurement be enhanced based on increasing capacity by having collaboration and partnerships with other professionals in the area? Now, it doesn't have to be from your town. It can be from, the probably an hour surrounding. But that will really open the door for you to bid on and participate in procurement opportunities that you wouldn't be able to otherwise. So I want you to think about that. I want you to think about who could I collaborate with or connect with and have relationships with that would expand my business and allow me to get into doors that I wouldn't as a solo entrepreneur. Another example would be if you are in the hair and makeup industry, in the salon industry, and you get asked to do a wedding or a graduation, and there's going to be 10 people, and they ask you, could you do this? And you're like, oh, that is beyond my capacity. If you proactively seek out other stylists and other people in your industry that you would say, oh, if I get a job or you get a job or an offer that is a collaboration that you need more capacity, let's partner on that. Let's co-deliver this service so that we're both doing a win-win. So the customer wins and they get access to greater capacity, and you win because you are able to collaborate with people and get more jobs. So I think in small town, we, especially as solopreneurs, we see it as we are just one, uh, our service, our business. But I invite you to consider that we can expand and increase the capacity of our services um, based on the quality of our relationships. And there's not going to be always the opportunity. There might be some other people that you don't trust. Small town businesses. I know that some people are going to disagree with me, but there's a lot of turf wars or threatened relationships because it's seen as if if there's two people that do this job, if I don't get it, they will. And so they see each other as enemies or adversaries rather than as collaborators. And so sometimes those two people have not built the best relationship. And there can be some, and what I have seen in small town is that often there's this real culture of of fight or flight, I guess, where it's total competition and I know exactly who my competition is. Whereas in the city, there might be 10, 20 people, but in the more rural and remote areas, you certainly know who your competition is. Now, having said that, I also want you to ask yourself better questions. I want you to ask yourself, how could I increase my capacity for procurement purposes and bidding on projects, for taking on bigger jobs and having more profitable jobs? What would it take for you to be able to have the capacity to build on or bid on jobs that are right now out of scope for you? And it's not just in the trades. It's like I said, in the salon industry. It could be in any of the equipment industries. I mean, in anything really. Right now, I'm a consultant and I do work with a company, and they bid on projects and they bid on procurement, and then they outsource it to us as consultants. So that's exactly what they're doing. They're increasing their depth and breadth of what they can offer based on the consultants that they hire. So you can do the same thing. And so I think in small town, we often see ourselves as these little, tiny islands. And then the big companies from other areas come in and take over certain jobs. But you could start asking the question of if this big store is going up and you don't have the capacity for it, say it when you do subs, can I will you introduce me and have the opportunity to sub underneath them? Sometimes it's just an ask. Now, I'm going to also suggest one more thing. Now, this goes against small town culture, but in my 23 years of farm debt mediation, it has been the one thing that business owners and farmers do that creates the highest level of risk, and that is handshake deals. You can't do a handshake deal, not if you want it to go well. You have to have it on paper, and the reason is that there's too many variables that people make assumptions on. So you might make the assumption that this deal is going to look like this, and the other guy is going to make the assumption that it looks like this. It is never the same. When you put it on paper and people read it and they have to sign on it, there is a much higher chance that you will have a coherence in understanding and a level of integrity because people they can see the words, they're signing on it, and you're all on the same page. If writing it on paper is going to blow apart a partnership or a collaboration opportunity, I would walk or run away from that, because if you can't have it on paper and have it go sideways, that whole friggin' deal is never going to work. If it doesn't make sense on paper at the beginning of a project, you know damn well it will never make sense at the end of a project. So I was working with a company a few years ago that was in the construction and concrete world, and there was an agreement that was made that was not on paper. And I kept saying, I don't think this is a good idea. And it was, tossed around. They're like, oh, no, no, it'll all be good. It'll all be good. And I said, I just these numbers are not making me comfortable. Of course, I was doing the books and looking at profit margins, and I just kept saying, and of course there were variables in there that were not on paper, so I wasn't sure how it was all going to be delivered. And sure enough, in the end, it was a terrible agreement, and everybody was on different pages. There was tension, there was misunderstandings, there was rework. It was not good. It was a disaster. And had they had the time, took the time, they did have the time. You always have the time to write it down and make sure everybody was on the same page. There is no way that they would have gone forward with it, because on paper, even at a beginning level, there was no way those numbers were going to make sense. So put it on paper. I had a client one time that had a handshake deal in regards to the purchase of some livestock. He was under the understanding that it was, I can't remember, but it's many years ago. I think it was a 5-year deal, and it was with cow-calf pairs, and I don't remember all the details of it, but he had the idea that this is how it was going to be. All of a sudden, he got demand from the person who had the cattle, who he had sold it to, or that had sold him those cattle, and was doing demand and was taking all the cattle back. And his idea of the agreement was very, very different. The difference was this guy had some money to pay for lawyers and this guy did not. So guess who lost all his net worth in those livestock? Yes, the farmer. Had he had a written agreement, that would have never happened. He would have never lost his cattle, and it wouldn't have, he would have, everybody would have been on the same page. Let's just say that. So handshake deals are a thing of the past. There are way too many variables these days, and integrity has a different look to it these days. And I don't care what industry you're in. So if you're going to do a collab, if you're going to do a partnership or any type of business relationship, take the time and just put it on paper. It doesn't have to be fancy, but at least you can have the opportunity to say, well, what about this? What about if we go over and we get some type of a penalty for, not on time delivery? How are we going to manage that? Or what if we go over budget? Or what if we don't get, we lose some of the contractors, the subcontractors, whatever it is. Have an opportunity to say what if, mitigate those risks, figure out where you're at, and get it on paper. So I don't want to talk a whole lot about this, but as you think about expanding your business or you think about creating more depth within your business, make sure you're asking yourself, who could I collaborate with? Now, there's ways that you can collaborate and create more capacity with all kinds of businesses. So you don't have to be in the immediate area, but if you are well known to collaborate with other contractors or other solopreneurs, you will then to start to create this community of business owners who will go after things and make a lot more money, because capacity is key in order to get the confidence of the procurement officer that says that you can handle this big of a job and that you can come in on time, on budget. So something to consider. I want every single small business owner doing work from their farm, from their acreage, from town. I want you to make as much money as possible. And I think that if we start to shift the culture of small town procurement, small town business, I think that we can get to a point where everybody's making a lot more collaborations and really creating some depth in that capacity. So you're not waiting for some big company from somewhere else. You have the capacity within the trading area that can do as good or better job than anyone else. So that's it. I hope I hope these last 3 episodes are getting you to ask yourself some better questions about your business and about how to approach profitability and capacity, getting customers in the door, understanding, and just really thinking and asking yourself, like, how has my customer changed? How has my business model um, left money on the table? Because chances are there is. I think that every business owner could do things a little bit better. So I hope it's created some value. And if you have any questions, don't hesitate to reach out, whether it's on social media in the DMs or to email me, because I really do think that this conversation is worth having and expanding on. And if you know of a small business that is doing a really good job marketing, that has totally evolved their business brand and the way they've attracted their customers, let me know, because I would really love to have them on and to share their story, because I think that when we start to have these conversations and share success stories, we all rise up. Every single solopreneur is better from hearing your story. So if you know of anybody, please reach out. And I'm also want to share that I'm excited that I've got a couple people going to be scheduled for some interview podcast episodes. So I'm excited for that. That's what's going to be a lot of fun for me, is have business owners here and hear their story and hear what they've done. I want to learn from them. I want you to learn from them. And most of all, I want to celebrate their success, because most often it's not the little guy that's getting celebrated. It's not the solopreneur that's, you know, working from their truck or working from their farm table that is getting celebrated and giving them opportunity to make more money and make more sales. And so I really hope that that is what this podcast becomes and is all about, is rising everyone up to make more money and to achieve more success, and see where it all goes. So that's it for today's episode. Thank you again for watching. If you haven't subscribed, please subscribe on my YouTube. If you're watching this, and if you're listening on your podcast platform, please follow, and that would be very appreciated and help me out a lot. So thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you in the next episode. Take care.